When you think about history, are there lots of old guys wearing wigs and stockings? When you think about history, is Napoleon really short? And folks have wooden teeth. Do you know that history can be the most incredible, amazing stories for you and me? Sit back and listen to a story right now. It's honest, it's fun, and it's sure to.
Hi, young historians. Welcome to another episode of Anytime Now. I'm Brooke, co-founder of Honest History. Are you as excited about this episode as I am? I sure hope so. We're about to dive into another story-filled adventure and learn something new. And remember, by learning more about the past, you can make a positive impact on the future. So pack your bags and let's go.
Did you know that roller coasters have a history dating back over 400 years? Even though early rides looked very different from the rides you see today, they still delivered a hair-raising experience. For centuries now, roller coasters have sent people flying through the air, and just like the ride itself, the history of these coasters is filled with twists and turns. Buckle up, young historians, because we're about to take a wild ride through time. We'll travel from the icy slopes of Russia to the bustling streets of Paris, and then across the ocean to the coal mines of Pennsylvania. This is the story of flying mountains, otherwise known as roller coasters. Our story begins over 400 years ago. A crowd of people gathered in a Russian town near St. Petersburg. They chatted excitedly as they lined up to take their turn. A huge wooden ramp towered above them. It was as tall as a 7-story building and sloped down like a hill. Slowly, the townspeople climbed the stairs up the wooden structure. Their legs ached by the time they reached the top. They looked down at the huge drop beneath their feet as the wind blew around them. Was this a good idea? Some wondered if they should climb back down. At the top, people were placed into sleds with only a rope to hold them in. Then, with a slight push, they were sent sliding down the hill. The wooden ramp was covered in a thick layer of ice, causing the sled to move so quickly it felt as if they were flying. The passengers screamed in fear and delight as they soared down the ramp. Thankfully, sand had been tossed at the bottom to slow them down. As they crawled out of their sleds, some were eager to climb back up the stairs to take another ride, while others had had quite enough. They were happy to remain safely on the ground. These giant slides quickly became known as flying mountains. They were the first built in the 15th or 16th century, and according to some historians, they were the inspiration behind roller coasters. Over the next 100 years, the ice slides grew more popular throughout Russia. They became bigger and grander, stretching the length of several blocks. The towering structures were decorated with flags and lit torches, so people could fly down the icy slides late into the night. The Empress of Russia, Catherine the Great, even took a ride down one of these slippery mountains and had one built near her palace. The ride became an amusement for the very top of society. You could see beautifully dressed ladies and gentlemen plunging down the giant ramp, screaming in delight. When a visitor from France saw this wooden slide, he started calling it Montagneros, which translates to Russian mountain, and it gave him an idea. He thought, I wonder if I could build a Russian mountain back home in France. Little did he know, this very phrase, Russian mountain, would one day become the French term for roller coaster. But the French visitor soon realized he had a problem. The winter weather in France was not as cold as it was in Russia. In France, the water wouldn't freeze on the slope, and any ice would melt almost instantly. Without the ice, how would the sled slide down the ramp? That's when he had another idea. What if he made a Russian mountain without ice that people could ride in the summertime? In 1804, French engineers built the most famous Montagneros in Paris. The towering structure dazzled passers-by who watched sleds fly down the wooden slope. Because there was no ice, the engineers made one small but important change. They added wheels to the bottom of the sleds. These sleds, or coasters, rolled down the wooden tracks of the slide at great speed. Today, historians say this was the first wheeled coaster. Now, you might be wondering, was this ride safe? And the answer is no. Back in 1804, there weren't many safety devices to make sure the riders stayed in their seats. There were no seatbelts, no safety bars, nothing to hold them in. The passengers had to grab onto the sides of the cart so they didn't fly out. Sometimes wheels fell off, causing the carts to screech and tumble down the wooden track. And carts often didn't stop when they reached the bottom of the hill. Many passengers were injured. You'd think this would stop people from riding the new wheeled coaster, but oddly enough, all the danger made the ride even more popular. To ride the Russian mountain became a mark of honor and courage. The only thing that made the ride less appealing was the number of stairs. People grew tired of climbing the endless steps to get to the top, and the ride eventually became less popular. But coaster mania had already begun, and soon, new flying mountains sprang up across Paris. There were the French mountains, the Swiss mountains, the Egyptian mountains, the American mountains, and more. The rides were made safer with some important updates. The engineers developed wheels that locked to the tracks. They also added cables that hoisted the carts to the top of the hill. Yet, even with these changes, it was still a dangerous journey down the mountain. Engineers had to make sure that nothing fell on the track or could derail the cart and launch a passenger into the air. There was one story of a man who had to get his leg amputated because a chestnut fell onto the track. But even with these accidents, people still kept coming. They'd arrive with pockets full of tickets, eager to take dozens of rides down the wooden mountain. These perilous rides played an important part in the history of roller coasters. However, this is where the story takes a turn. You see, news of these Russian mountains didn't travel very far, definitely not as far as North America. In the United States, engineers began constructing their own wheeled coasters and didn't know that much about the ones that had already been invented in France. And unlike the Russian or French rides, these coasters weren't built for amusement, not at first anyway. And the passengers weren't even people. The story of the American roller coaster all began in the coal mines of eastern Pennsylvania.
Hi friends, are you enjoying today's episode? I'd like to take a quick break from the story to tell you about another great place to learn about the past. Honest History creates magazines and books for kids that are filled with fun stories and activities that bring history to life. From pirates to spies to great inventions and so much more, you'll learn about interesting people, places, and events from around the world that made history. Created for kids ages 6 through 12, you can sign up and receive new adventures delivered straight to your doorstep every quarter. Just visit honesthistory.co. That's honesthistory.co to sign up today. Oh, and here's a special offer for our podcast listeners. Use code ANYTIMENOW for 10% off. Again, that special code is ANYTIMENOW. Okay, let's get back to the story.
It was 1830 in the mountains of Pennsylvania. A team of mules pulled empty carts up a winding path. For over 2 hours, the mules zigzagged up the steep mountainside, dragging the heavy wooden carts behind them. When they reached the top, the men unhitched the tired animals from the carts and started shoveling coal into the wagons. Once 6 carts were filled, they were sent back down the mountain towards a river at the bottom. These carts flew along the steep tracks, with only the force of gravity pushing them forward. At the bottom of the mountain, the men emptied the coal from the carts and piled the black rocks onto boats. The coal was then shipped down the river. This was the Mauch Chunk Railway, one of the earliest railways in the United States. It was built to transport coal from the mines at the top of the mountain to the canal below. Now, you might be wondering, what about the mules? Did they have to walk all the way back down the mountain? And don't you worry, the mules got to rest their legs, but maybe not in the way that you'd expect. At the top of the mountain, men would load the animals into the last few train carts. And then, just like the coal, the mules were sent on a ride down the steep slope. Let's just say the mules didn't enjoy the ride and were very happy to get out of the carts. But the people who saw the mules were a little jealous. They watched the animals roll down the mountain and thought, hey, that looks fun. Soon enough, the coal company decided to add passenger carts to the railway. After that, people could also take a ride down the mountain. The mules finally got some time off after the development of the steam engine. A new switchback track was built that zigzagged up the mountainside. Using steam power, the empty carts were pulled back up to the top. No mules were needed. The switchback railway took a scenic route up the Pennsylvanian peak, and soon even more tourists arrived in Mosh Chunk. City folk wanted to escape the crowds and see the beautiful Pennsylvania landscape. They were in for a thrilling adventure. Passengers were placed inside the train carts and pulled up to a high point. For 3 minutes, they could gaze around and admire the mountains and the river in the distance. After 3 minutes, the carts traveled 6 miles down the mountain, rolling under the cool shade of the trees. It was a nice escape from the summer heat. Then, the cart was pulled up over 1,600 feet to the very top of the mountain. Passengers were given time to view some of the mines at the top, and then their journey back down began. The carts would fly down the tracks, descending the mountain's steep peaks and unexpected turns. Every which way, passengers were surrounded by rocks, stones, hills, and cliffs. Amazingly, the carts could reach speeds of up to 50 or 60 miles per hour. "It's a hair-raising trolley ride," one of the passengers remembered. By 1872, new railroads and tunnels had been built that connected the mines directly to the canal below. The railway in Mosh Chunk wasn't needed anymore, and yet the coal company decided not to shut it down. In just 1 year, over 30,000 tourists had come to ride the Switchback Railway. And these tourists gladly paid for a ticket. The coal company had unexpectedly discovered a new way to make money from its coal mining operations. By this time, the American people had shown their love for fun. The very first amusement parks opened in places like Connecticut, New York, and Ohio. Crowds of people traveled to these outdoor parks to swim in pools, taste new foods, and ride the spinning carousels. The amusement park was the perfect place to test new and strange ideas. With the discovery of harnessing electricity, inventors began to dream up exciting ways to wow audiences. Electrical trolleys and moving sidewalks let passengers take a ride while staying in their seats. Some inventors took inspiration from rides that already existed. Rides that took their passengers on a thrilling journey down a mountain. Rides like, you guessed it, the Switchback Railway. An inventor named LaMarcus Adna Thompson had taken a ride on the Switchback Railway in Pennsylvania. Inspired by his trip, he began crafting a plan. What if, he thought, I built a mountain out of wood and put a railway track on top of it? Then, the carts could use gravity to roll up and down the structure. Thompson got straight to work, designing his wooden mountain. But where would he build it? He soon found the perfect location. He would build his exciting invention in Coney Island, New York. By 1884, Thompson's gravity switchback railway was open for business. That summer, tourists flocked to Coney Island to explore the sandy beaches and lively boardwalk. As they weaved through the crowds, they could snack on some grilled clams or buy a hot dog from a nearby stand. It was here that they could take a ride on the brand new gravity switchback railway. After paying a nickel, passengers climbed the stairs to the top of the tower. Then they took a seat on a bench inside a cart. Using gravity, the carts began to roll up and down the wooden hills until they reached the other side. The carts only went 6 miles per hour, so it wasn't the most thrilling ride, but passengers got to admire the view of the beaches and the crowds around them. The Gravity Switchback Railway in Coney Island was the first roller coaster built at an amusement park in the United States. Today, most historians consider it the first modern roller coaster, and it would be far from the last. As the years rolled by, new and more thrilling roller coasters sprang up across the country. By the 1920s, the United States had hundreds of roller coasters, all built of wood. Some of them went as fast as 60 miles per hour. But, even with its popularity, the roller coaster nearly died out. Amusement parks struggled during the Great Depression and World War II. During this time, people didn't have the spare cash to pay for a ticket. Some historians credit Walt Disney and the famous Matterhorn ride at Disneyland for bringing the roller coaster back to life. And, unlike previous roller coasters, this ride wasn't built with just wood. The Matterhorn's tracks were made of steel. This change ushered in a new age for the daring roller coaster. Today, there are over 6,000 roller coasters in the world, and we are happy to report that they are much safer than they were hundreds of years ago. These days, passengers have more than a piece of rope or their own hands to hold them in their seats. So the next time you take a ride on a roller coaster, remember, you're joining a centuries-old tradition. From the icy slides of Russia to the flying mountains of today, the roller coaster has had a long and winding history.
Welcome back! What did you think of today's adventure? We hope you learned something new. Be sure to share the story with your friends and family, and use what you've learned today to go out there and make a positive impact on history yourself. That's all for now, but if you want to learn more about important and amazing stories from the past, be sure to subscribe to Honest History Magazine, where you'll discover stories from around the world. Thanks for listening. This episode was narrated by Randall Lawrence and written by Heidi Coburn. Production was led by Robot Pirate Media. To learn more about Honest History, visit us at honesthistory.co and follow along for updates on social media.